Phrenology means different things to different people, and to me, the whole basis of what I do, which I would call practical phrenology, has to do with evaluating the strengths and the weaknesses of a person based on their cranial characteristics. Probably I'm the only person who really does, to my knowledge, phrenology the correct way right now. There's a lot of people who just make a big joke about it because it has traditionally been called a fraud, but in reality that's very far from the truth. For one thing, I've gone back through and have a very extensive collection of books that I've read through. I have a lot of things that were written records of people giving readings, and from all of this, I've been able to find some very, very interesting things that have to do with what phrenology was really all about. Phrenology as a medical science basically started in the very early 1800s, maybe slightly before then, and that was by Dr. Russ Gumbel, who was an Austrian. He basically noticed that each individual person tended to have different head shapes. He also found that back especially then, people would tend to have a lot of brain injuries, and depending on whether there was a spike in a certain part of the head or not, he noticed that those different things seemed to affect different parts of a person's personality. So he basically went through and said, not only that the thought was coming from the head, which people did not really know for sure before, but that it was actually very localized. When I started reading, the first thing I do is I use the old tape measure, which is used to basically measure the circumference of a person's head. From that reading, it gives me an idea of the size, because the size very definitely relates, according to phrenology, to the size of the organs and the natural abilities. Then I have a craniometer here, and this is actually a 150-year-old instrument. And with this, I go from the medulla oblongata up to the forehead. I'm actually measuring which part of the head is larger. For example, if I say they have a large head, but if it's in the back or if it's in the front, it makes a difference because the more logical part is in the front. So this helps to give me a feeling. And it turns out, interestingly enough, that these readings that used to be made actually are no longer quite valid, because I found that people's heads are actually larger. So really every one that I do is helping to contribute toward this new database. And so far I've done about 1,600 different heads. Some of the people who cut down phrenology say, gee, extra things are being discovered, so that proves that it's not a science because they haven't found out everything yet. But that's actually the definition of science, is that you don't know everything and that you are continually working toward understanding more about it. And even as I hear more modern new things and more things about personality theory and all, it really helps me to understand more what I'm actually doing. Phrenology quite often is associated with political idealism, racism, things like this. In fact, the French considered the very lowest people to be the Irish, of which I am. So I can easily talk about racism in phrenology. But it was really a very complicated subject in terms of understanding politically how all of these different countries with their different political ideals fit together. And that's really what defines the individual aspects of phrenology that people quite often misunderstand compared to the practical phrenology that I do, which is more of a very humanistic type of science. So it's really done with the hand, with the fingers, and actually feeling what's going on. Things like the Dickens Festival, I really fit exactly into their era. And anyone in the Dickens era did not ask what a phrenologist was, because they basically knew what a phrenologist was. So with my connections through the Historical Society of Pomona Valley that I'm a member of, it was easy to make that connection. One of the important things to put a historical perspective on phrenology was it was really growing during the era of the Industrial Revolution. This is when the country was absolutely taking off here. With this whole new world, in order to make it into something different, you had to have people who could do different things. And the phrenologists were the people who went out and actually told people, You know, you have capabilities beyond anything that you've done before. They really went through and did their best to actually help people. The big motto of phrenology was know thyself, because when a person goes through and just looks at who they are with their own eyes, that they miss what other people see about them. So when someone else tells what they see about them, and if it's someone that in some way, even for a few instances, that they respect, this helps them to change. Yes, people universally do say that they had a very positive response. In fact, usually they'll bring back everyone that they know in their party saying, boy, you have to do this. So it's just pleasing to know that it is of value, but in particular to know that people even come back to me also, because they've been working on things and they tell me about their progress and ask about other areas that they could be working on. So it's very rewarding. Okay, I've always been interested in both sides of everything. So like I've been an astronomer, you know, but I can also do astrology. And although I've been an engineer, I also belong to the Psychic Entertainers Association, the Ghost Club. And I think it's very interesting to combine everything together. I think what makes me slightly different than a lot of other people is because I have a little bit of an entertainment background in very strange areas. And that gave me the confidence to really go about doing phrenology, because a person has to really try to do it honestly, I'll say for at least a few hundred people, before you really start to figure out what it's really all about.